guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review, and this is the first of a 5-part series of reviews of all the Hannibal Lector movies. And so I'm reviewing every movie that's been made for the character. So to start that out with 1986's Manhunter. And most of you are probably saying, isn't Silence of the Lambs the first Hannibal movie? It's the first one with Anthony Hopkins, but it's not the first one ever made. So, I'll start out by giving you a brief history. They started out as books. They're on the Silence of the Lambs, so that they're based off of books by Thomas Harris. And the first book is called Red Dragon. Silence of the Lambs is the sequel to Red Dragon. And in 1986, they adapted Red Dragon into a movie called Manhunter. And at its time, it wasn't very successful. It was a bomb and didn't get that great reviews at the time. But as it's gone on, it's kind of gained like a cult status, and a lot of people really like this movie. So, I'll explain the plot a little bit. The movie starts out with FBI agent Will Graham, and he has like an ability. He can really tell what a psychopath is thinking. So he was part of the FBI, and he, after putting Hannibal Lecter in jail, he quit the force. But there's this killer going around called the Tooth Fairy that they're having a hard time trying to catch. So they get Will Graham, and they bring him out of retirement to go find this killer. And along the way, he a couple scenes like Silence of the Lambs, he goes to Hannibal Lecter to ask for help and stuff like that. So that's the gist of the plot. So I'll start out by saying the performances in this movie are great. Every performance nails it, especially William Peterson, who is better known as the original main character in CSI, before Lawrence Fishburne took over and stuff like that. And here, he's you could tell that he's screwed up from all the stuff he's been through. It's taking its toll on him, and he's not completely stable, and it's a really interesting take on a character that I felt in the later film version of Red Dragon didn't do too well, but I'll get to that when that video comes. So, I thought his performance was great. Every time he was on screen, you were interested. And just his performance was great. Next, we have Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter. A pretty different take on him than Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins is always kind of slow, and he kind of stares at you, and he has kind of slow talking. This one, he's a quick talker, and it's much different, and it's still really good. It's really interesting. You just hate the guy. The way he talks, you can just tell that he just wants to mess with Will Graham and stuff like that. And so that, I love his performance. Brian Cox, the actor who plays him, he's more known, at least for me, as William Stryker in X-Men 2. That's more, and he was also in Rise of the Planet of the Apes recently, in case you need a visual. The rest of the cast does pretty good. As the Tooth Fairy, Tom Noonan, who, he's not really a well-known actor. He played the Frankenstein monster in Monster Squad, and was the bad guy in RoboCop 2. But he's actually really good. He's really creepy. I would not want to be in a room with this guy. All by myself. He just has a creepy presence to him that it's kind of you can't trust him. And so our performances all around are great. The director of this movie is Michael Mann, who will later go on to direct Last of the Mohicans, Heat, and Public Enemies. And he does a really good job. He's a good director. So, there's a few problems I do have with this movie. A lot of people love this movie, and I don't love it. I really like it, but I don't love it, and I feel the movie is really slow. And it took me a couple viewings to really get into it. And until last time I watched this, when I really started getting into oh wow, that's awesome. But the first time it was kind of come on, get moving, you know? And I think my biggest problem is with the writing. It's this one story problem. It's the fact that, in a really interesting note, the Tooth Fairy isn't seen until maybe almost halfway through the movie. At least 40, maybe 45 minutes in. And it makes it really interesting because it builds up the suspense. Who is this guy? And you trying to see him, he's just oh, it's kind of creepy. But there's this whole little subplot, which is kind of it's a subplot, but it's kind of the main part of the story, where the Tooth Fairy kind of falls in love with this blind lady, and the kind of relationship that is, I thought was done really badly, because he's not introduced till so far into the movie, to the point where that storyline, the girl, isn't introduced till even later into the movie. That you're halfway through the movie and all of a sudden you're introduced to this brand new character that you're supposed to care about. I'm just like, wait, when did this character come in? And some of that stuff felt rushed. There's only like 2 or 3 scenes really with the girl, and there's not enough time to really develop the characters, which I found that part to be a little annoying. But for the most part, it's a really well-directed film. There's a lot of great use of colors, in all the scenes with Graham and his wife. It says blue coloring to it. Interesting use of colors. A few editing not mistakes, but I didn't like them during the final scene. There's kind of a shootout. I thought giving too much away. That I just thought was really weirdly edited, and I thought it looked bad to me. It was probably a stylistic choice, but I didn't like the way it was awkwardly cut. But for the most part, it's a really great thriller. It keeps your interest throughout. It's not heavy on Hannibal Lecter, because in the actual book, he wasn't in it a whole lot. He's about in it as much as he was in the movie. Whereas in the Red Dragon movie later on, they expanded his role because it became an icon. So he's not really in it too much. It's not really a Hannibal Lecter movie, but it kind of is. It has him in it, but it is short screen time. Shorter than Silence of the Lambs screen time, but overall, great thriller. Well, not great, very good thriller with a few story issues that I found a little annoying. Just saying. But it keeps your interest, and there's some great scenes where some of the scenes I thought were really well done were with Will Graham and how he figures out what the killer did, because the way he does it is so creepy, because he kind of just sits there and he's like, no, you took off your gloves. Yeah, I took off your gloves, and then you touched it with your bare hands. You could just tell he's just figuring it out. It's really kind of creepy that how he could do that. I thought it was really good. Overall, if you're a Hannibal Lecter fan, it's definitely worth checking out. And if you like the Red Dragon movie, it's an interesting movie to check out to see the different takes on the thing. Because Red Dragon has this whole fake out ending, but Manhunter doesn't, which I found really surprising at first. I'm like, wait, where's the fake out? And then that didn't happen. So there are different interpretations. This one takes its time more, whereas Red Dragon I felt was a little bit fast. And not really in a good way. I mean, it's kind of you could take your time with more of the subject material. You didn't have to completely go that fast. But an interesting take, creepy. There are some creepy moments. A good crime thriller that has Hannibal Lecter in it, not played by Anthony Hopkins, which is kind of weird. But yeah, it's fine. It's a good movie. Now, out of 10, I'd give it an 8. 8 out of 10. Like I said, I had some issues with the storyline, and some of the editing was weird. And like I said, at first it was a little slow, but it definitely gets better after viewing it more. If you watch it once and you don't get it, it's worth it to see it again, because it's a really intriguing movie, well done, very 80s, I'll put it that way. There's a lot of real 80s, there's a lot of 80s music. And Will Graham at the end of the movie walked around in short shorts, which I thought was a little weird, but besides that, it's a good movie. It's worth checking out. So, I'll probably do these videos every other day, and which means our next video will be the classic, the one that Hannibal Lecter is known for, Silence of the Lambs. But until that time, that's about it, and I will talk to you guys later.